It's great to see you this morning, and it's lovely to be in your presence. It's one of those things, it is the highlight of the week for me. I love coming to church. Try and twist my arm to go on a Saturday night. Yeah, I might come along. Twist my arm to go on a Sunday night. Yeah, I might get over that tiredness from lunch and that sleepy food that's sort of sitting around wanting you to rest. But Sunday morning, there's something special for me. I love Sunday mornings, and I don't know if it's just the way that I was raised, but there's something special about starting the week and getting together on a Sunday morning. So welcome to you all. And I've been looking forward to bringing you this word this morning, and it might not be the thing that I do best, but I know that blessing comes when we open ourselves up to the work of the Lord. When we open up His Word, there is so much gold. So there's gold in them there hills. There's gold in them there pages. Let's see if we can tease it out a little bit. Thinking about rest this morning, I wanted to plug our basketball team. But Jane trumped it. I will still talk about our basketball team. I'm not on it. But I've heard that these guys had their first big win on Monday night. Is that right? Have I got that right? Paul, can you tell us, when everybody sort of got over that, can you tell us the score? 36-18. So it was a very convincing win. It was a victory. And part of their victory, I believe, I've been told, is that they actually have two teams. I don't know how they pulled that off, but they've actually got two teams. It's almost like a defensive team like Gridiron and an attack team. So what they do is, these older guys, mature, what they do is they put out one team onto the basketball court, and when they're tired and they're needing rest, they swap over. And so they've got two teams in the place of one. I thought, wow, what a great way to talk about or start my sermon this morning about rest. But Jane, you trumped it. You definitely did. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, wow, there was a rest that you were forced to have after your operation. And I guess you would have tried to rest beforehand, and there would have been a way that you did that. You would have given it to the Lord. You would have gone to His Word. You would have sunk yourself deeply into prayer. And although there was this turmoil going on and this idea of heaviness or worry, you just kept giving that back to God and laying it at His feet. And there was that rest that got you through or to take that plunge to go into what you needed to do. And then there was that forced rest where you had to recover and get back to full health. And then here you are today. You are rested and still needing rest, of course, but here you're up and about, restored, and well and truly on the mend. And so today I want to talk to you about 3 points about rest. And the first one is rest through hard work. And if you want to say boo, that's fine. I totally get that. I also want to talk to you about rest through obedience and loyalty. That can be a little bit uncomfortable too. And I also want to talk to you about rest through redemption. And that's the one I like best. It's when we're redeemed, when we're brought out of the mess that we're in. That's when we get the best rest. But let me start. So rest, what is it? How good is it to have a comfy chair? How good can it feel to dust something off? Clean up, store away, or prevent something valuable from deteriorating? Forms of rest can vary greatly. Sometimes it's collapsing under a shady tree or from physical exhaustion, or diving into the surf on your day off. Often it's the hardest day's work though. Sometimes it's those hardest days of work that lead to the very best rest. And our study of Ruth and Naomi's story leads us to understand that true rest is where it can be found. So understand what true rest is and where it can be found. I'll say it again. It's understanding where true rest is and where it can be found. So no matter who you are, we all need to experience good rest in the right intervals and in the right way. Now, this is the part where I wrestled and I wanted to sort of throw all this thing away, and I just wanted to read chapter 2 and chapter 3 of Ruth. It's one of those things that you try and preach out of, and there's so much stuff in there, and you think, goodness, how do I narrow this down? And pulling it down to rest was a great idea, and that was a synopsis that I got off Pastor Mark, was to show you how Ruth rested in the situation that she was in. So when you read it, you may not see that coming out. And so there was a journey. Naomi was not, she was not well in that she wasn't well provided for. She'd lost her husband, she'd lost her 2 sons, and she needed to leave Moab. Moab was a place that was a distance away from Bethlehem and Judah. It was a long journey, different cultures, probably different languages completely too. And she had to leave there and go back to Bethlehem or Judah where there was more food. So there was a terrible famine in the land. And in Moab, you couldn't get the food that you needed. She was going to go on her own, and she took Ruth with her. And Ruth was told, no, go back to your people. Go back to those things that work for you, because it's a drought. So go back to your people and be provided for. I've got to go to my people. And so Ruth said, no, I can't leave you, Naomi. Even to the point of death, I want to be with you. Even if it costs me my life, I still want to be with you. So there's incredible loyalty, incredible obedience, but through it too, there was a lot of hard work. Now, Ruth's hard work, when she reached Bethlehem and Judah, was to provide food. There was no husband, no brothers, no males in that family to cater for them. And so Ruth had to find some initiative. So she showed initiative, and she concentrated at the task that was required. And as she was working at this task that was required, it refers back to what Pastor Karen was talking about last week, that word gleaning. Now, to glean was to walk into a field, and in the corners of those fields and around the edges, there was a lot of leftover stuff, and it was almost like our welfare department, Chris. Our welfare department actually was out, and it had barbed wire fences around it, and it was a little bit of leftover grain, whether it be barley early in the season or wheat later in the season. It was left over as welfare for community. So Ruth said to Naomi, let me go out and glean. Let me go out and work. Let me go out and get welfare from the neighbouring places, in the paddocks, in the fields. And so she did that. And usually barley is harvested at the end of spring, towards the end of spring. So the days are nice, but they're starting to show a little bit of summer in them. So to get up early and to go out early and start to work was a good idea. And so she did that. And so she went into the field, and she just picked one at random. And so she started to work in that field. But as it happened to be, and it actually says this, as it happened to be, fluke, no, coincidence, no, but it just happened to be that she landed in the field of Boaz. So Boaz was actually referred to as a kinsman redeemer. Now, I don't know if you know what a kinsman redeemer is. Sarah, Hannah, do you know what a kinsman redeemer is? You do. Awesome. You've probably been reading Ruth. Con, do you know what a kinsman redeemer is? Okay. So a kinsman redeemer is someone in your family that takes on the role of the deceased husband. So Ruth had lost her husband. We don't really know how, but we know that he had passed away. The idea of the kinsman redeemer is to step into that place, and Ruth had not had a son. And so the duty of the kinsman redeemer was actually to marry and to give a son to that lady. The idea of it was the son would become the dead man's son in place of. So it wasn't referred to as the kinsman's son, but as the dead man's son. So the name was kept, the family name was kept. Now, through this hard work, Ruth kept persisting. She worked all day long. It came to a certain time of the day, and Boaz himself came to the field, and he saw the new lady working in the field, and there was other women there too, and he referred to them as his women and his harvesters. They were the men. And he said, but who's or who's the new lady? And he said that to the supervisor, and the supervisor said, oh, that's Ruth. That's Ruth that we heard about. She's come to town. She's come to Bethlehem. She's come to Judea with Naomi. She's the one that we've been talking about. She left everything behind. She's been faithful to Naomi. And not only that, not only did she come along, she's out in the fields today and she's working to help Naomi and herself. Not only that, but she works really well. She's a hard worker. And so Boaz was like, okay, this is a good lady to have around. And so he invited her over to have lunch with them. And he said, look, I want to look after you. So welfare, as in the day, turned from just being able to collect things. Welfare actually turned into blessing. So she didn't just have to fend for herself, but she was invited to sit down and have lunch, possibly under a shady tree or maybe under a shelter. And then in there, she was actually given roasted barley. And so she was told that she could eat all that she wanted. She was given a serve of this roasted barley, and she could eat plenty, all that she needed to get her through to the rest of the day. So you can see that her hard work and her reputation opened up a way for her. Her hard work and her diligence, not just sitting at home with Naomi, but going out into the fields, doing what she can, doing what she's able to, it led to blessing. It led to so much blessing for her. Not only that, but when she went home that night, she took what she'd harvested, which was the barley, but she also took the leftovers that she received from Boaz and gave that to Naomi as well. And that's one of those things about rest. I used to love it when I was a little tacker, and I had a big brother who was 5 years older than me, and he had this thing called money. And with that money, he would buy things like Mars bars and chips and all that bad stuff. And there was one of those things I loved to hear from my brother Simon, and he would say, Eads, you can have the rest. And isn't it great when someone, and it's probably not the lady, the ladies are probably going, what are you getting on about? But for some of the fellas, when somebody says, oh, you can have the rest, it's like, whoa, okay. If you go to men's camp and we're doing sashimi and brisket, all those sorts, if someone said to me, you can have the rest, I would be so happy, and I would sit back after I had a nice meal and I'd feel completely rested and ready to go. I also want to talk to you, though, about rest through obedience. And obedience is one of those things that I believe today is frowned upon, unfortunately. Obedience seems to be this, we can see it in Ruth when she bowed her head down to Boaz and thanked him, and she said to him, why do I find favour with you? Why does your servant find favour with you? And yet today, we see obedience as weakness. We see obedience as being pushed back, missing out, and not getting what is ours to take. We believe that we've got to step forward, that we've got to take what's ours, take what we can get, and to quote Pirates of the Caribbean, give nothing back. That is not obedience. That is not loyalty. So let's have a look at her obedience and loyalty. Boaz said to Ruth, she said, stay here. Stay here. So Boaz said to Ruth, don't go wandering off into the other fields. Don't go and work for someone else. Stay here. And so she stayed working for that family, and she was in the paddocks. The reason why she said don't go somewhere else was because of safety and security. So her loyalty and her obedience led to safety and security. If she went to another field, who knows what may have happened? She may have been beaten. She may have been dealt with harshly. She may not have gotten as much grain. She may have even been abused in other ways. We don't know that. Let's give the men of that day the benefit of the doubt, but they could be harsh with people. The other thing too is this. I want to read this verse to you. She was also obedient to Naomi. When Naomi was working hard behind the scenes to gain rest, she was also encouraging Ruth to be loyal. And she says these words. She says, Ruth, wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor where Boaz is, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. And so Naomi, in her love for Ruth, wanted to see her gain better rest than just going out into the fields every day and working for what she got. And yes, she got some extra blessing because of her obedience. She got extra blessing because of her commitment to Naomi. But there was still more that could be gained, still more. So not only was she looked after with the welfare side of things, and then moved to the next stage where she was actually treated like a really good worker and respected and honoured and given roasted barley, something that had been improved. But now Naomi could see that there was more again, more that could be received from her kinsman redeemer. And so what she's then said was, we need to do something about this. Naomi was working hard behind the scenes. As our ladies do, they see the details. Chris, you brought some information to us this morning about Max. And so you're working behind the scenes. You're watching what is going on, and you apply that almost to the point of manipulation to bring about good things. And I'm not saying manipulation in a bad way. I'm saying knowing what it takes to take hold of opportunities and using your wisdom and your experience to encourage those younger ladies to take advantage and to be wise about their choices. And so Naomi said that. She said, go down, put some perfume on. Wait until Boaz has had plenty to eat. Don't nag him before he's had his dinner. That's not going to work. Wait till he's had some nice drink as well. So, but then when he lies down, while it's still light, take note of the place where he's lying. Then when it goes dark, this I'm assuming a little bit here, but when it goes dark, then go over and uncover his feet and lay down. He will tell you what to do. Now, there's some mix-ups when you look online. They'll tell you that Boaz actually went and laid beside, Ruth went and laid beside Boaz. That's not it. That's not what our New Testament, that's not what Ruth tells us in the Old Testament. She actually laid at his feet. And that's what Jesus encourages us to do. You can see the parallels there. He encourages us to lay at his feet. And what do we want to do? We want to wait. We've got to wait there. And he will tell us what to do. But what's it like lying there? You're at somebody's feet. Yeah, he's probably washed his feet. Boaz probably did. We know that Jesus has got great feet. They're like bronze, burning bronze. We know it's awesome. But it's dark. It's dark. You're in the threshing floor. It could be uncomfortable. You're not in a nice, comfortable bed. But laying at the feet of Boaz showed obedience, loyalty, and patience. And so we've got to be patient too. So from that place, Ruth was able to stay at his feet, and then he entered into a conversation. Now, let me see if I can find this conversation here. Yeah, here it is. It's in chapter 3 of Ruth, and it's verses 10 and 11. It says here, so Boaz says this to Ruth, "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier." What's going on? What has she done there? So she's laid at his feet, and this kindness, he sees this as kindness, laying at his feet. It's kinder. It's kinder than what you've been doing. It's more kinder than what you've been doing earlier. You are laying at my feet. God sees it as kindness when we surrender to him. When we wait at his feet, he sees that as though we're showing him kindness. He values you so much. And that kindness, he goes, whoa, here's this person who is willing to put their life at my feet and wait on me to do the very best I can. And yet, I don't get that. Jesus looks at us with kindness. He thinks we're kind to him when we surrender to him. I'd never thought of that before. Yes, we love him. It shows him love. But this kindness thing, what is that? And so anyway, she goes on to say, and he said, I'll start again. "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. So this noble character was brought about because she had the right to lay at his feet. She had the right to go to her kinsman redeemer and lay down at his feet and say, "Rescue me." She had the right to go and lay down at his feet and say, "Take my problems." She had the right to lay down at the feet of Boaz, and we have the right to lay down at the feet of Jesus and say, "Take my burden, take my cost. You are my redeemer. Please pay my ransom. Please pay my ransom." That is so powerful. And that is why it's hard to stand up here and preach and not read chapter 2 and chapter 3. It's just gold. Now, there's also this incredible rest through redemption. And when Ruth went home and saw Naomi later that morning, she had to sneak out before daylight so that no one could see that she'd been on the threshing floor. And so she snuck out. Yes, people were shadows and silhouettes, and she could probably get home safely. And that's probably why Boaz said, "Don't go anywhere. Stay here where you're safe and wait on me." But she got home to Naomi, and Boaz had also given her 6 great big scoops of this beautiful barley that he had obtained. It was a gift to her. And so she took that home to Naomi, and Naomi said, "Whoa, what's happened? Tell me all about what happened last night." And she said, "Well, I did everything that you said, and I laid down at his feet. And then he said he would do this for me, that he would, one, either find the right kinsman redeemer, who was, because there was another one there. There was another one that could have taken his place. He actually had the first right. And who has the first right to us in some ways? We gave a right up, didn't we, on stage? We surrendered ourselves to Satan and we came under his curse, the curse of sin. Now that meant that the law came along to show us that we were messed up. God gave us the law so that we could go, "Oh, we are so messed up. I had no idea how far we had fallen. Really bad." And that is like the first kinsman that had a right to Ruth, but he couldn't pay the price. And so he turned that down. That didn't work. That was not the way forward for Ruth. And so then Ruth had Boaz step in. He became the next kinsman redeemer that could pay the ransom, buy the land, and increase the inheritance. There's also another interesting thing as I wrap up. The family name. If I say Vanderveer, we get a picture in our head. We know who they are. If I say the McGregors, the Roberts, if I say the Baldwins, there's this name that's important, and it has reputation, and it has to it also an inheritance. One day, Tommy, you will inherit something from your parents. You have already inherited things too. You've already inherited traits. You've inherited the clothing that you're wearing today. You've already got an early inheritance from your parents that covers you and provides for you. We also have an early inheritance from Christ, who clothes us in righteousness and also provides us with the things that we need. When we put our trust and our loyalty in him, we can move forward and we can be rested. We can have that eternal rest. We can know that we have been redeemed. We know that there is eternal rest waiting for us because of that. But there's one other thing. The reason why the firstborn son given to Ruth through Boaz, there's the reason why Boaz wouldn't recognize him as his own son, but the son of the deceased man, is so that the inheritance that Ruth would have received still goes to her through her son. And in Jewish law, that meant that the name of the man who died, the deceased man, would not be blotted out of the town register. Do you hear that? So that son that was born out of death, that son that was there to take the place of the lost son that could have been there, but the fella died, that son takes on the name of the deceased father, takes on the inheritance, and has his name placed within the records of that town. That's you when you receive Jesus Christ. That's us. Where is our name? It's written in the Lamb's book of life. It can't be blotted out because we've been redeemed in the right way. We've been redeemed by a ransom or a price that covers everything. It covers the land. The price covered the marriage and provided a precious resource through a young son. But that name, your name, Catherine, your name cannot be blotted from the Lamb's book of life. Just like Boaz's son, his name, or the deceased man's name, could not be blotted from that register for the town. And that is the salvation that we have. I'm going a little bit over time, but there's something I want to read to you guys. It's about Moab. And there's something here I think that might help us with rest. It says this, it says, Ruth left Moab, her ancestral home. She left her customs, she left her practices, and she left her religion to follow Naomi, to be with her family and to follow Naomi's God, the God of Israel. I wanted to ask you, what's your Moab? What's your Moab? So Ruth had to leave Moab, and so she left her customs, her practices, she left her people. What is your Moab? What stops you finding rest? What stops you finding rest? And so with God, Ruth had this as it happened moment. And so God's got one of those waiting for you very, very soon. When you put your trust in him and your faith in him, when you say, no, I'm leaving that stuff, or yes, I'm going with Naomi, I'm going with the Lord, it opens up a way. It lets God do one of those things. It's an as it happened thing. And so somewhere in the next weeks, I truly believe there's going to be as it happened moments that you can go, wow, God is at work in my life. God is working for me, not against me, and nothing can take my name or blot it out from the Lamb's book of life. Well, let me pray for you guys. And thank you for listening. Heavenly Father, it's wonderful to be able to immerse ourselves in your word. And so many times we read these miraculous stories in the Bible of peace and how people were rested and catered for. And we know that in the days ahead and the weeks ahead and into eternity, we can find rest in you. Thank you that our names cannot be blotted out of the Lamb's book of life. Help us to find rest in that when things are tough, when we're working hard and we find ourselves in the wrong field, when we're faced with being loyal and we've been disobedient. Help us to move from that place back into a place of obedience and loyalty to you and to your word. And we know that there is blessing in it. Help us find rest in that, but also help us to find rest in the eternal promise that our names will never be blotted from the Lamb's book of life when we enter into marriage with you, when we enter into covenant with you, when we lay at your feet and surrender and become your servant. Yeah. So thank you, Lord. Thank you for the lessons in Ruth, and we ask that you bless us this week as we go about our things. Amen.